Great. And could you introduce yourself briefly?
I'm SC Neely, they, them pronouns, owner and clinical director at LGBT Counseling Collaborative.
Great. Thanks. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You've already given your name, but if you want to share about where you grew up, how long you've been in Arlington, why and when did you move here?
Sure. I am a DMV native. I was born in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I've been in and around this area for most of my life, with some brief time up in New Jersey and southern parts of Maryland, and Virginia. But I've always come back to the DMV area and Arlington specifically. I came here for college, and I stayed ever since 2007. So it's been quite some time now.
Cool. And what is your association with the collaborative? You shared it earlier, but your role, responsibilities.
So I founded and began the LGBT Counseling Collaborative in 2023, and now I am the clinical director. As a clinical director, I oversee all the therapists on staff. Everyone on staff is queer or somewhere on that spectrum, or trans or gender diverse in some way. And we mostly serve that population and their families, allies, and partners and people like that. And so we really work to provide therapists who have lived experience in that LGBT plus spectrum with clients who want a therapist who can understand them in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're the founder. What brought you to start the organization?
As a queer, gender fluid person myself, I struggled with finding therapy services that I didn't have to explain myself repeatedly to the other person of who I was, and having a foundation where someone could just jump right in with where I was at was really helpful, but also more so from an employee side. I'd worked in a lot of places as a therapist that I felt very isolated in my identity or tokenized in that identity. And so it's really amazing now to come to work and everyone shares at least one identity with each other, and feeling very seen and validated and heard every day. And that has been really wonderful.
When did you found it? When did you get started?
In the late 2023 is when we opened our doors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then what was that process like, just becoming an official counseling collaborative?
Sure. That was just kind of a hit or miss. Decided to do it, and didn't have a lot of experience in what it would look like to start a brick and mortar company. I had run solo entrepreneurial jobs and ventures in the past as an author. I'd written a lot of books in my 20s and early 30s. And so there was some marketing and business elements to that I was able to bring over into building this business as well, but it was still very different. And definitely a learning experience. So I think, definitely some mistakes made at the beginning, figuring out how to start everything. A big goal of mine was to, bring in the community really quickly and rely on local partners and things like that to use a lot of word of mouth, as well as bring in local resources that I could partner with, other companies in the area that were either doing something similar or adjacent that we could benefit from each other. And so I think that grassroots way of starting really local is really helpful for me.
If you were telling a stranger about the LGBTQ plus counseling collaborative, how would you describe it?
I would say that it is a team of psychotherapists who all identify somewhere on the queer or trans or gender diverse spectrum, and we work to bring affirming and celebratory services to that community and their families and allies.
So you've shared a little bit about this, but tell us a little bit more about the collaborative. Who is in the group, and what is your vision as a group?
Sure. The vision is still unfolding and ongoing as we go. I think with each new person that's added, they bring their own vision to it that kind of molds into the larger vision. Mm-hmm. So a big part of it being a collaborative is the collaboration piece, that everyone has a say and everyone is involved in different ways, and what the future looks like really depends on the makeup of the team and the different things that they want to pursue or specialties that they want to bring to it. Right now, as of today, we have 6 therapists on staff, but we have another one starting in the fall, and we'll continue to add more next year as well. We really want to stay in like the Northern Virginia area and focus there, but a lot of our services are virtual or telehealth throughout the country, depending on each therapist is licensed in different states. And then a big goal of ours is also to be or to become more of a teaching space for resident therapists and therapists who aren't fully licensed yet. All of us here have gone through experiences in our residency and internships and things like that where we either felt really isolated in our identities or weren't given any training on working with people with our identities. And so we really also want to provide training to those therapists, but also to other like businesses and things like that on how to best work with queer and gender diverse clients or employees, and just make the entire area as celebratory and affirming as we can in different marketplaces.
It sounds like you've got a lot of different short-term and long-term objectives. I think let's focus on like 10 years, like long-term objectives. Do you see that changing at all or evolving or?
I think it will have to evolve with where the country goes, right? Like there is a very real possibility we aren't allowed to be here in 10 years. And so that is something we have to consider. We keep everything very private. We do struggle with threats and harassment from people in the local community and nationally who seek us out, even if they're not local to this area. And so I think, we always have to be aware of the possibility that, we might not sustain it 10 years and that there might be a period of time where our identities have to be more covert in the future. So that one is a hard one to answer, but in a perfect world where we're allowed to be free and have the same rights as cis straight people, then I hope we continue to just really bring educated, affirming, and competent services to the community and beyond. I also really hope we can do a lot of advocacy work in pushing politics and local rights and understandings for our community as well as creating more spaces for the queer community. Third spaces in general are really important, and Arlington and Northern Virginia has one. We have one bar in the area that is a third space for the queer community, but that's it. So, opening up more third spaces, cafes, bars, community centers that are more dedicated to that community would be a really wonderful thing we'd love to help with.
What services do you provide?
So we do a little bit of everything. We do individual therapy. We do a lot of group therapy. We love group work. And we also do a lot of couples and relationship counseling. We do non-faith-based premarital counseling, or, I prefer people do that like before they move in or get engaged, any sort of big decision, pre-lease signing counseling. But yeah, so we do that. We also do like ADHD and autism testing and assessments. We do gender affirming care in terms of like letter writing for surgical interventions and things like that. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's pretty expansive. Why do you feel that services like that are important to the community?
Our services are all really tailored to the specific needs of the community. So like our groups are focused on like the queer experience locally and what that might be. Like we'll have a group about having an aromantic or asexual identity, or we have a group on religious trauma, which can drastically impact the queer community compared to the cis straight community. So things that are more targeted to the exact experiences, as well as like collective traumas that the queer community tends to face more often or at a larger disparity compared to other populations. Tell
us a little bit about the people who work at the collaborative.
So we have a lot of really great people on staff. Do you want to know like specifics about like their names and things?
Sure, like maybe specialties or.
Do the names. If you
Yeah, no.
Okay.
But
I
like
think we were looking at more like what do they do? Or
specialties
Sure.
and kind of things like
Sure. Yeah, we have several different types of licensures on staff. So we have LPCs, licensed professional counselors, and then we have psychologists, and then we have residents and externs and interns on staff. And so everybody specializes in something a little bit different. We have people who specialize specifically in queer military and veterans and their families, which also can overlap with some federal workers, DoD, and things like that. We have people who specialize in neurodivergence specifically and what that might look like across the spectrum, from autism to ADHD to anything else. We have an art therapist and play therapist on staff, so we also work with like children 8 years old and up, as well as a lot of families and family therapy. You know, we require any work with children to also actively involve the family and the parents with that as well. Religious trauma is a big thing we work with, complex trauma as a whole, any sort of trauma really. The depression, anxiety, those sorts of things, of course, as well. We have several people who specialize and focus on BIPOC experiences, immigrant experiences, refugees, as well as we have people who specialize in chronic illnesses, HIV, AIDS, and other things in more of the medical vein as well.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the struggles you faced?
I guess some of the biggest struggles are the difficulty with accessibility, as in order to be private as possible, we can't take insurance, and that makes us a little less accessible than other places. It also means that we're more private in that an insurance company is not allowed to come audit our paperwork, take information about people. We're not required to provide diagnoses that might unfairly stigmatize or pathologize people, particularly pathologize like gender diversity issues or things like that. But it does mean that that can be more difficult to find a way to fund and things like that for people. So the ways that we work with that is to everyone's caseload, 25% is required to be sliding scale or low pro bono. So that at least makes it a lot cheaper and more accessible to people. Similarly, we also do a lot of partnerships with organizations like Pineapple Support or Asylum Works, where they will cover a certain number of sessions for a client that they refer who might need specific specialized help, whether it's like someone in sex work or refugees or different things like that that come directly through those channels. So those are the ways we try to make it more accessible, but that can certainly be a barrier for some people. But privacy is our number one concern, and that is a big piece of it. And then second would be harassment, discrimination, and just having to like fight for space, I guess. So we'll certainly get threats, you know, email or phone calls. A lot of that is harassment, usually in like a lot of fetishized things or commentary that come with like sexual or fetishized nature, and those are really upsetting to hear. Or we'll get a lot of like condemning, like Bible verses, you're going to hell kind of thing. And then we also really struggle with like maybe like finding our footing in other like businesses that don't understand the special needs of like this particular population or what that looks like, and having to fight to take up space of like, you know, here's why we need you to kind of listen and pay attention sort of thing. Like I was recently talking with a local government organization here about us doing like a training on what it's like to work with and make things more accessible for queer employees. And, you know, we just got so much pushback on like, you have to be apolitical. You can't say anything political. And it's like, well, my identity is political and that wasn't my choice. And so like those kinds of things where it's like, we can't skirt around that if you want to address that. And trying to find, you know, trying to advocate for how those things do impact us and what that will look like.
Why would you say that groups like the Collaborative are important to have in the community?
I think it's incredibly important to have representation in anything that you do, and to see yourself represented in any field is extremely meaningful. A lot of people who find our services are always surprised because they're like, oh, I didn't even know that this was possible, that I could find a therapist who has been through that or had that experience or knows what I'm going through. And so that is extremely meaningful. It's also really helpful for family members, particularly for like queer youth and things like that, for the family members to have somebody to guide them of like, I have this trans kid and I feel like I don't know what to do or how to help guide them through the world. And maybe that parent doesn't share an identity with their kid. And so to have another adult come in who does share that identity and can give them guidance is extremely comforting and helpful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Do you work with other groups and associations within the community?
Yeah, we really take collaboration seriously. So that while we are our own separate business, we are constantly partnering with other organizations, and just find it really important, whether it's to help provide services to their community or their organization or their employees, or to do the same for them. We really like to be involved with like the local Chamber of Commerce and all the different Pride events, and each different like local city near here. There's a lot of other specialized nonprofits in this area that maybe specifically bring services to youth or specifically bring services to a specific population, and there's a lot of overlap then that we can do to help them be able to provide more comprehensive resources and services.
What are some of your most memorable moments so far?
As a business owner? That one's hard. There's been a lot of memorable moments. I will say this year particularly has been really a bit of a whirlwind. We've been recognized publicly in some really lovely ways. We just won the 2025 Best Business Award from Arlington Chamber of Commerce for service. We last weekend were awarded the Rainbow Shield Award from Modern Military Association of America. We've been like the top mental health practice in Arlington Magazine, the most LGBT friendly workplace from Washington Blade, like several different things like that, accolades that have really specifically focused on the inclusion of like queer identities in the workplace and the type of business that we run, not just for the clients but also for the employees. The way that I focus on running this business as a collaboration is incredibly different than how group practices are normally run. Most therapy practices are run a little bit similar to law firms, where it's like a billable hours and a lot of ships passing through the night kind of thing. And I really focus on everyone on the team being very involved with each other. We have a lot of overlapping cases that we're constantly consulting on, as well as like creating friendships and building community just within the employees. I think has made a big difference in just like work-life balance, but also has allowed for us to give like more than livable wages to our clinicians without them being burnt out, without going an insane number of hours. So that's been really great.
That's wonderful. Why is it important that the LGBTQ plus Counseling Collaborative continues its work?
I think it's incredibly important in this day and age, particularly because of what pushback we're getting. Every trans federal worker on my caseload has been fired in the last 2 months, and some in some very derogatory ways, and more so than just that, right? So like, it is an incredibly difficult time where we are living under, I'm going to call it a regime that doesn't allow us to exist safely, that makes us worried about going out, about looking queer, about being targeted for those things, about going to Pride events in the next few weeks and worrying if we're going to walk out of that, So I think it's incredibly important now more than ever that mental health services are provided for that community that is being attacked, but particularly are provided by people in the community who also understand the feeling and are safe to talk to about that.
Well, that's all the questions that we've got documented here. Is there anything else that you think we missed or you want to share and be included that represents you or your business, or your team?
The only other thing I think is like a little more history on, myself based in Arlington is I went to Marymount University, and that several people on staff as well went to Marymount or have worked with Marymount. And so that has been a big part of all of our journeys. I have both of my master's degrees and my undergrad degree from Marymount. And so that is and I've done adjunct work with them, so that's a big part of like Arlington roots in this particular company. Similarly, I also have written a lot of novels, and I've based the majority of them out of the DC area, so that I think is another like local tie. I write under the pen name Sarah Robinson for fiction novels, and usually romance, and I have every type of romance from like cis hetero romance to queer and lesbian romance to asexual and aromantic romance. So a little bit of everything, and it's really, I think, a lot of our history as a company, but my history just as a person is very tied in the DMV roots, and so I'm very excited to continue to stay in the DMV area and Arlington specifically for the rest of my life.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a clarification
Sure.
on that? Was that the reason that you settled in Arlington, or did you see a need here, or was it more that you were already here?
It was more that I came here for college, and I've just felt for the first time in my life like I had found a place that felt like home, and so I just didn't want to leave. So.
That's wonderful.
Go on the reel.
Yeah. Ended with a banger. Well, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time and opening your business to us.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Ellie, our therapy dog. She's a 12-year-old little pup, and she sits with all the clients while they are in session, and really helps people to feel their emotions a little bit more in their bodies as they're petting her.
Okay.
If you could just share your name and your role here.
My name is Yesenia Arias, and I'm one of the clinicians here at the Collaborative.
Oh, great. How did you find your way over to the Collaborative?
Oh, yeah. So I was actually working at Marymount University in the Counseling Center, and I came to a point where I was looking for a new opportunity, but I wanted to find something that felt more intentional about the work. There's so many opportunities for clinicians in this area. You can go into nonprofit, private practice, all of that. The private practice sector always intimidated me a little bit because it felt kind of like isolating, and also like you just kind of, the pool of the population you could work with kind of felt limited at times. So I don't know, I just was looking for opportunities, ended up bumping into this. Fortunately, they were looking for someone too. And I just really liked the intention behind how the business was being built and how it was really about, being collaboration between clinicians. So I thought that it would be a good opportunity to work more intentionally with a population that matters a lot to me, while also working more closely with other clinicians too in that space.
Do you have any memorable moments that you want to share?
Oh, for the brief time I've been here.
Yeah.
I think it's just been really lovely to get to work with other clinicians, get to meet like other folks who are in the queer community. I think it's pushed me to be more involved in that space, and I've been making more connections that way. And whereas like in my previous jobs, it's just kind of been in that bubble, whether it was in that university space or in like nonprofit space, and you get really comfortable. And I think this is pushing me to be a little bit uncomfortable, but in a good way.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. Why do you think the Collaborative is so important to the community?
I think in particular in this moment in time in history, it's really essential to have spaces that create visibility of like marginalized identities, and create like opportunities for safety and security. And this space offers that. Because people out in the community know that all of us here, we're part of the queer community. They know that we understand, they know that we care. And beyond that, beyond folks in the community, like having a business in this area that is very upfront about what it's all about, and is advocating for our community, like that is so important. I think it's very easy for fear to make people be quieter and hide, and it makes sense and it's valid, but at the same time it's really important to be upfront and bold in moments like this.
What are some of your goals for you personally bringing to the collaborative? What do you want to bring?
I think that one of the things I would like to bring is like more opportunities for like I'm Latina, for the Latino community, and bridging that, because there's so much still like homophobia, misunderstanding, and so just and in general stigma around mental health still. And so I'm always like, any space I've entered, it's really important to me to kind of bridge that with my community, but also like kind of be, again, back to the idea of visibility. Like, I want to be visible, and I want to be like a face that people know and feel like they can see themselves reflected in.
Is there anything that you'd like to share about the collaborative or your career? Or anything that you think that we?
That last one. But
I think Roland got it.
Yeah. And the answer could be no too. Just making sure that we didn't miss any. Just making sure that we haven't missed anything, any message or knowledge that you'd like to impart and be included.
I mean, it's just like a general thing, like, and kind of goes back to something I said earlier. I think it's just really important to right now stand up for the things that you know are right, and not cower in the face of like really scary things happening, which is hard to do. But I think courage is what we all need right now.
Chloe Goldbach, she, her, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist here at the practice.
How did you find the collaborative?
Through SC, actually, the owner of the practice. We had a mutual case that we were working on and met by collaborating on a client case, and then found out that SC had just started a new practice. And I had been wanting to join a space that really focused on working with queer and trans folks. So it's kind of a very opportune, unexpected kind of opportunity that opened up.
Do you have any specialty? Do you focus on any specific specialties?
Yeah, so I primarily work with trans folks, especially trans women, on elements related to identity, exploration, affirmation, challenging a lot of internalized messages from society that are very harmful to a lot of queer and trans folks. Beyond that, I have a lot of background in working with college-age populations, so I love like kind of that emerging adulthood kind of period in people's lives. So a lot of my clients are like in the 18 to like early 30s age range, and on top of that, probably my next niche is really working with outpatient eating disorder concerns, and more recently started doing ADHD and autism testing in addition to my individual therapy.
Forgive me if you've already shared this. How long have you been with the collaborative?
Since about May of last year, so
Okay.
about
Do you have any memorable moments you'd like to share?
Any memorable moments? I mean, I really enjoy our team meetings. I mean, there's probably a couple where, like, definitely opening up more than, maybe I typically would in previous settings, and being able to, like, connect with other queer clinicians and being able to be myself. One in particular of just sharing some of my background and kind of unexpectedly getting emotional, but being able to do it in a space that was, like, incredibly supportive, and it was welcomed and not looked down upon or being othered for it as I might have felt in some other spaces.
Sure. Why do you think the collaborative is so important to the community?
I feel now more than ever that it's important for there to be resources for queer and trans folks, for there to be supportive resources, spaces where they can fully be themselves, be affirmed, be safe, like just being who they are, and being able to do that with providers like us that are queer and or trans, and have shared identities and experiences where they can feel not only affirmed but understood and empowered. And yeah, I feel like there's not enough resources and spaces for queer and trans folks. I think spaces like our practice are always important, but I feel like especially important in our current climate.
What would be, or do you have any long-term goals for either your career or the collaborative itself? Like, where would you like to see this movement long-term?
I'm still very much figuring that piece out. I do have a huge passion. I want to continue doing like individual therapy. I think I want to eventually expand into doing more like affirming assessment for adults with ADHD and autism. I want to find more balance for like community work and some teaching or academic work at some point. Because I know I have a huge passion for this work, but I know I also want to eventually balance it with other pieces, because it's very rewarding work, but it can also be quite tiring at times. So I think kind of just looking for ways to tap into like all the different interests.
Sure. And why do you think it's so important for the LGBTQ plus counseling collaborative? Sorry, like my stutter when I get to continue the work. Why is that important for you personally and for the community at large?
I mean, for me personally, like as a trans woman, like my identity as a trans woman, finding community as a trans person was, quite literally life-changing, being able to be myself and be in spaces where I could be myself and, just grow into the person that I am today. Being able to have those spaces is a big reason why I'm doing this work, and this was a career shift for me. And, it's like personally important for me to feel that I can give back to the communities that I'm also a part of. And I feel like that is a big part of why we're here as a practice, but for me personally, that is why I want to be in a space like this, because I want to be doing the type of work that feels personally fulfilling, and I found that giving back to other trans folks is one of the ways that feels most fulfilling for me.
Is there anything else that you'd want to share or have included in any of this footage or in the interviews?
No.
The answer can be no. It's fine. The answer can be no. We just want to make sure that if there's something, a message that perhaps one of the questions didn't lead to, that you think should be said, now would be the time to say it. But you're not obligated to. It's not.
Yeah, you can say no.
Nothing's coming to mind.
No, so that's fine. That's fine.
Those broad questions, I'm like,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving us.